And so start Florence in 2018, do some warm-up shows, and then they're going to build this big set that's all going to be made out of wood, right? It's going to, have this plywood look to it. And I know, for you kids that have seen it, if not, you can go out and Google it, the 2018 tour. So that's 2018. I know we did some festivals or whatever, then we build a set, and then we start, I want to say we started it in Europe, right? We didn't start in arenas in the US, we started in Europe. Maybe we started in the US, I don't fucking know. But at any rate, that was kind of a crazy one, because what we had to do is we had to make it, because we knew we were going to be in sheds in the US in 19, right? So we have to make it so it's going to just roll out on the floor, because in sheds we already got your stage, whereas in arenas we carry our own stage, rolling stage. So you basically were building two things. You're building your rolling stage, and then you're building something on wheels on top of it, right? So it was a little bit convoluted and all that and everything, and it definitely support acts hated it, because you really didn't have a good place to set up on it. So apology to all the support acts, but that was not my design. I was just the guy that was directing getting it built. So let's see, that's 18. We start 19 in Australia with Florence, okay? January, we're in Australia. We do all of Australia. I fly back to LA on, I think the 2nd of February or whatever, or maybe the 1st, and go right into Pepper's rehearsals, right? Because now the Peppers are gonna go to Australia in February and the beginning of March. And then on, like, I think it was March 16th or whatever, we're playing in Egypt, we're playing the pyramids with the Peppers. Go ahead, you got a question? Say it.
Well, I mean, I can't even, when you say playing Egypt, what do you mean? Like at a venue?
No, we're playing at the pyramids. There's like this area where like bands have played before us and they do stuff like there's like this area that's like, it's like a concrete slab, if you will, right? And it's put in, and they come to find out, like, having been there, right, the Bureau of Antiquities or whatever it is, like, you can't pick anything up off the ground. Dirt, anything, you can't touch the ground, right? Because of course it's so ancient and all this, so you have this little place where you can like do this gig. But I'm gonna go back. So we do Australia with Florence, successful, right? And New Zealand, right? But I think it was just a short thing. Like, we just went over to New Zealand, we played like one little festival in Auckland and came back, because I don't think we sent all the set over, right? And I'm not even sure we brought parts of the set down to Australia, but whatever. I can't remember it all, right? So we do the Australian tour, and then I come back. I literally got off the plane after flying how many hours from Sydney to LA, and got a rental car and went right into rehearsals for the Peppers. Finished Peppers rehearsals, we play the Grammys with, of all people, Post Malone, right? So he's very popular and still is, and we come in and I think we played part of Give It Away with him or whatever. I should know the song, damn it, and I can't remember it. It all just friggin' runs together. I'm sorry. So we do that, get on a plane, fly to Australia. Or did we start in New Zealand? We might have started in New Zealand and then went to Australia. But anyway, we do that tour. And then at that time, we were running like an A and B rig backline, right? So we had, I think, the A rig with us in Australia, and we had sent the B rig to Egypt, okay? So we were just basically coming in with like the universal gear, right? The guitars we had to bring and some other stuff coming into the B rig. And we had like A rig wardrobe, B rig wardrobe. So we get to Egypt, make the flight there, we get in there. And it's weird, man, because like you're going to the site, and like it's not like everything's built around it, right? Like there's all these shops and everything, and then okay, here's where we go up to get into the pyramids and all this stuff, right? And it's kind of crazy, because like you start going up this road, and there's gun towers on each side with like guys, they're manned with machine guns, and like you don't do the straight thing, right? You do like the serpentine thing, and you got the big concrete blocks, and you go back and all that. So it's like, okay, they mean business here. And then you have to get out of the van, and you have to go inside, and then somebody goes through the van, and then that gets pulled over here, and you go through, and you go back in the van, and it's convoluted, but at the same time, it's like, it's crazy, because it's not just like there's a special spot for us. It's like, did you know we were coming? You know, I mean, whatever. I'm not trying to sound like a pompous fucking white American, but
they
it's
don't
like,
care.
but it's like you don't give a fuck. Like, whatever. Get your ass in line. Shut the fuck up. We'll get you in when we get you in. You know, and whatever. Fair play. So we finally get in. We see the site. Like the gear comes in. We clear all the customs there. But it's like, again, you know, the customs guys show up. You know, it's almost like being in Jamaica, right? The saying in Jamaica, soon come, man, soon come, you know? And I only know this because I had my PA in Ithaca in a club called The Haunt that did a lot of reggae bands. So, like, trying to get those guys from the hotel to go do the gig, woo, soon come, man, you know? So that was kind of that vibe, right? Like, no, we can get something to eat. We have a little tea, you know? Then we'll get to your gear kind of thing. So whatever, it got in there. But again, like, you just don't, you take it for granted, right? Because like we have all these resources as Americans or as Europeans or whatever, Aussies or whatever. You take it for granted. You go down to your hardware store, you get this, you get that. Oh, I want to rent some lights. Oh, you don't have them. I'll get them from my buddy. But like we had like all the moving lights in Egypt at this gig, right? And it was, and the designer designed it so it basically was these 4 steel beams or whatever that came up and made a pyramid, made the frame of a pyramid, and you look through it and you saw the actual pyramids, right? So, okay, you're playing there, you don't want to, you got this beautiful backdrop, let's use it, right? So, and the lights are hanging on the actual structure, right? So, well, like we've got all of them, you know, and it's like just this little stage and there's sand and dirt everywhere, and there's like a little shack for production, and like we're gonna do a gig, you know, and it's like there's just nonstop construction. Like those guys built everything from scratch. Like the carpenters there, oh my God, they're some bad motherfuckers. I'll tell you what, those guys built everything, right? They built all like the concessions that went on. I mean, they built stuff for us, like, hey, we need a little riser, step here, no problem, man, and just knock it out, and it's perfect, right? And I'm skipping over a lot of stuff, but there's, like I said, there's other people that were there, and I don't want to tell their story because they should be able to tell it, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes, so whatever. So, you know, on my end, it's like, well, logistically, you're trying to get it done, and it's like we brought in our own power guy, we brought in generators, we're all this, and then it's like, well, great, you look at the pyramids, but they're not really lit up. We're playing at night. So then the next problem is like, okay, well, how do we light the pyramids? How do we get permission to light the pyramids? All right. So again, big logistical nightmare for somebody other than me, right? The production staff, the LD and designer, right? So whatever, they get all these like portable lights, as many as they could get, and they end up lighting the pyramids for the show. And my wife was watching it because the Peppers just put it out online or whatever it was like a free concert, right? I mean, yeah, people paid to be there, but you could go see, because my wife was watching it online and texted me going, this is the best fucking show I've seen. And that's something, because she's seen a lot of shows before me. She's a big fan of music, pays attention to it more than I do, because I'm kind of fucking old and jaded, like, you know, if you ain't paying me, you know what I mean? Hey, it's horrible to say, right? So she's like, this is fucking incredible. Wow, this is amazing, right? So good. And whatever, so it's this amazing show, but part of it was, I'm going to tell this story. So, of course, you need some kind of, and it wasn't like we had 1 million people there, right? I think there was 10,000 people that came to the show, right? Like, you know, and, but you need barricade, right? And what barricade is, if some of you don't know, it's like, it's that structure where they put down in front of the stage, and like, you know, the people, or punters as they're called in the UK, come up against it, right? And it keeps them from getting to the stage, and people sometimes get crushed, but hopefully not, but whatever. So this barricade shows up, and normally it's bolted together. Like there's a section, they stand up, then you bolt it to the next section, it does the same, and there's no bolts. And we're like, where's the bolts? And the guy's like, well, we don't use bolts. I'm like, hang on. There's a barricade, it's clearly built to have bolts in it, I can see where the bolts go. Nah, we don't use bolts. We gotta have bolts for this. Really? You guys gotta have, yeah, we need bolts. Like we need to bolt the barricade together. That's just what we do. So they got us all the bolts they could find. All right? All the bolts they could find, which wasn't enough. So we bolt obviously the most important pieces, right? The downstage, we get all bolted and like we've got barricade around the front of house, right? But there was these, because of the structure, right? So there's these like concrete blocks that are kind of out in the crowd, which is the base for these, you know, two of the four pieces of steel that come up to form the outline of the pyramid, and they're out in the crowd. So we ended up getting what's called scaff pipe. So if any of you have driven by a job site and you see this big scaffolding and there's these bars that are like diagonal to straight, well, that's scaff pipe, right? And they have something that's called a scaff clamp, and either it comes in like a hard clamp that would be like this, or a 45 opposite, and then they have swivels, right? So I had swivel scaff clamps and scaff pipe, and that's how I like connected the barricade around those pieces, right? And this was like 2 hours after doors opened. Like it's like an hour before the band's supposed to play, and we're still putting barricade together. So there was, you know, and that's just one of the trials. There was a lot of them.
So they do a full show?
They did the whole show, yeah. Yep, yeah, you can go online and see it. I'm sure it's out there. Great show, you know, God bless them. I mean, I give kudos to those guys because, you know, they, without bullshitting at all, like they care about their music, they believe in it, they love doing it, and it, at least for me, in the shows that I've seen, and I've been fortunate enough to have been around with them, what, 19 years now? They're always good. There's shows that are exceptional, but they're always good. So yeah, they did the show, and you know, the kids were happy, and we tore it down and packed it up into trucks. Then it went to the airport, or went to, I don't even think it went to the airport. It probably got on boats because of sea freight. We had time to freight it back, right? Because it was the B rig. And they were kind of done for a while, right? So we do that. I get home.
Wait. So what would your old man have thought that you were playing the pyramids?
He probably thought that was all right, because he lived long enough for me to support Guns N' Roses. I hadn't worked for him yet, right? Because he passed in March of '92, and he thought that was pretty cool. Like, wow, my kid's out. Like, you know, well, he doesn't work for the band, but he's out there with another band, and goddamn Guns N' Roses. You know, I mean, at that time there was like still magazines, right? I remember there was like an article in them in Life magazine or whatever, and you know, I remember my old man talking to me about that. He's like, you know, and it's like finally. I think for him and my mom, like I had said earlier, it was like, it took until goddamn 1990 for me to like make enough money to support myself just from touring. And I started back in what, fall of '82 or January of '83, depending on what I remember or what I decide's my starting point, to really be like, okay, this is when I gave up everything else and started doing this. So there's a lot of times where I came back home and slept in my old bed, and like, you know, you didn't come home for free. My old man was like, well, your ass is up, and you're either like mowing lawns for me in the cemetery, or you're cutting wood, or you're splitting wood, or you're doing something, but you think you're just going to come here and sit on your ass? That ain't going to happen, you know, and bless him for it, right? But yeah, I mean, he was already, I think, proud already, right? Because it was like, okay, I see what you're done, you know? And I mean, the other thing too is like, I mean, it was the money, right? Because like, I was making more money in a week than he never made in a week. And I think it was one of those things like, you know what, kid, you did fucking better than me. I think as a parent, right? Maybe I'm wrong, but you just want your kids to do better. Maybe that's a stupid fucking thing. And I apologize to any kids if they think it is, but that's the way I was brought up, right? So like, I'd done better than him. Fucking good on you. There you go. You know, but yeah, I mean, I think he'd been all right with it. Yeah. You know, there's people that get really excited about it, and I don't know if I'm just really turned into that old jaded bastard. I'm sure there's plenty of people like, oh, you've been that for a long time, you know, but whatever. But like, I don't know, it was just like, it was another gig, right? It was just like more layers to it, and it was more difficult, right? But yeah, okay, played the Pyramids, great. Well, you know, there's a merit badge, woohoo, you know? And then I went home.